Hello, and welcome. I'm Alan Arcane, private investigator of the strange and supernatural. Here I will share my case files that open the doors into the paranormal. These documented phenomena of modern myths, urban legends, and eyewitness testimonies will stretch the limits of belief. We'll explore conspiracies, ghostly encounters, cryptids, alien visitations, and allegedly true listener stories that lurk just outside of our bizarre reality. These are true accounts, mysteries, and legends drawn from the dark unknown shadows of our world. This is Mysteria Arcana. When I first set out to create this program, this archive of the unknown, I knew it needed a name that resonated across the centuries. Something that didn't just describe the strange, but also belonged to it. I wanted a name that felt like it had been carved into stone long before we ever walked this earth. So that's why I chose the name Mysteria Arcana. 2 words, Latin, ancient, powerful. But before we go deeper, maybe you're wondering, who even made Latin? And why does the ancient tongue still whisper through our darkest mysteries? Latin was born in the hills of central Italy, not in temples or laboratories, but in the mouths of shepherds, farmers, and warriors. It was the native language of the tribe called the Latins, who lived in a small region called Latium, we now call Lazio, the land where Rome would rise. As the Roman Republic grew, so did its language. Latin evolved from a humble dialect into the official language of an empire that spanned 3 continents. Laws, philosophy, military orders, medical knowledge, all written in Latin. It became the language of the elite, of power, and eventually of eternity. When Rome fell, Latin did not. The church claimed it, preserved it in sacred texts. Alchemists and occultists adopted it, not just because it was traditional, but because it was exclusive, a language for those in the know, those who sought truths not meant for every ear. So Latin wasn't just made, it ascended from a language of villagers to a language of an empire, and then to a cipher for the arcane. So, you see, Latin is more than just a dead language whispered in the dim corridors of Catholic cathedrals or printed in the footnotes of dusty old Bibles. It is and always has been the language of hidden knowledge. The church, the grimoires of Renaissance sorcerers, the coded messages of secret societies, they all used Latin because Latin was never meant to be casual. It was meant to be eternal. So, let's talk about the name Mysteria Arcana. Mysteria is the root word for mysterious, as you probably already surmised. It means things unknowable, hidden truths, the kind of knowledge that doesn't just show itself in daylight. And Arcana comes from Arcanus, meaning secret, closed off, concealed, It's the same root we use when we speak of the arcane knowledge, or the major arcana of the tarot, cards that claim to reveal the architecture of the soul. Together, Mysteria Arcana doesn't just mean mysteries and secrets. It means something more potent, more ancient. It's the kind of title you'd find embossed on the cracked leather of an old grimoire, also known as a book of spells. Latin endures because it was designed not to evolve. Its rigidity makes it eternal. And in the world of the occult, where knowledge was dangerous, forbidden, even deadly, the ancient scribes and magi wanted their ideas preserved in a language that couldn't be changed by common tongue. So when the rogue priests of the church feared heresy, when secret societies passed forbidden wisdom, and when magicians and alchemists recorded their experiments in shadow, they did so in Latin, because Latin made it exclusive, secret, sacred, and things like that can be dangerous. So, welcome again to Mysteria Arcana. Now, let's get into the case file.
In my childhood, I grew up in Garden City, Kansas, in the mobile homes, and there were so many stories of supernatural stories, paranormal stories, where we grew up, a mix of like Laotians and Vietnamese and Mexicans, Caucasians, and so we all had our ghost stories, right? But we were living it. So we lived in this mobile home, and my brother, he would always play G.I. Joes in the bathroom, and he would always trick me into letting me play with his figures while he took it in the bathroom. I'm like, I never realized it, that he was scared, because he would trick me all the time, say, hey, you want to play with my snake eyes and my blah blah, and I'm like, yeah, and he'll leave it on the sink, and I'll be playing with the figures. Anyhow, he never told me why he would let me only play with his figures when he was taking it, right, until later, till we got over. But I remember using the restroom, and we have our trash can like across from us, because it's a small bathroom, so we have a trash can across from us. Like the weirdest thing, I remember seeing different color hands, the shadow hands, and it would call to me. It was just like, just a hand on the side of the trash can, like it's the shadow, but I can actually see fingers rolling, giving me a come here motion. And the weirdest thing is that it wasn't just a dark shadow. Sometimes I would see it in different colors, like a red shadow or a pink or yellow, something just colorful. And I remember seeing that in the corner of my eye, and then when you really look at it and you see the intel of it, like the way I can remember it is when you see something moving on your peripherals, when you see that on the side of the corner of your eye, then you go and turn and look. Like I saw a hand, and then you see the fingers for a second just call me, and then disappear. And I know what I saw because it was multiple times. But being a kid, it wasn't until me and my sister moved away, our family moved away to a different state, and we started to share ghost stories as kids. And I shared the story about the hand, and my sister pulled me aside in front of our friends and said, tell me you're lying right now. Tell me you're joking. And she had this wide-eyed look in her face. And I'm like, what? She goes, I must have told you this. My eyes widened. And I said, wait, you seen that too? And we both were our jaws just dropped. We never spoke about it because we were afraid of it, right? And we both just looked at each other like amazed too, like, oh my goodness, that was real. You know, the whole time you think it's a figment of your imagination as a kid, but when your brother or sister can testify of the same exact visions, then you had to have known that that's real. And we shared that with the rest of our family, and that's when one of my older brothers confided in me and said, dude, that's the whole reason why I let you play with my G.I. Joes in the bathroom. It's because I too saw and felt there were entities in our bathroom. And years later, one of my other brothers told me to ask my dad about the home. One of my brothers told us, he started to confess to and said, guys, our place was haunted, and I'll tell you why. And he says, the reason why I never told you guys, because Dad asked me to promise him that I would never share this with you guys. So one day, my brother, I have like 4 older brothers. One of my brothers was being naughty and ripped the carpet off the ground. He pulled it back because it was loose, and he ripped it up. And he saw the floor, the wood flooring underneath was burnt. They never repaired it. It was just burnt floor. And my brother asked my dad, Dad, what's up with the floor? It's all burnt. And my dad said, don't tell your family this. This trailer park was a man lived alone here. I think he had a heart attack or whatever. He died while the stove was on. And this place was burning. That it was the fact that the neighbors were able to save the mobile home that we got this place for cheap. And he says, I don't want your brothers and sisters to be afraid, but the owner of this place died here on this spot. And it just blew us all away. No wonder we all felt and dealt with so many paranormal activities there. I remember in the middle of the night, my parents would work till 1 in the morning, and the VCR would blink in the middle of the night because that would be the only light that I can see out of my bedroom. So I remember being awoken in the middle of the night, and I've heard a deep voice conversing with a small raspy voice. And I was like, and they weren't speaking English. It was like gibberish murmur. And I was trying to make out what they were saying. And it was almost like they were having a full conversation, like a deep voice person, and then a very small, raspy, tiny voice, like, yeah. And the other voice was like deep. And I was like, that is not my family. And I know what I heard. And some entities were having a conversation in my living room at that night. And I woke up my family. I just threw that in there because that's just one of the experiences that I've had in that mobile home in Garden City, Kansas. So that was my story, with my sister's testimony in there, and my 2 brothers that have shared the same story. There's also another mobile home next to us that was never rented out. The pipes burst during winter time, and so being in Garden City, Kansas, you didn't get to do much, so it was very boring. So we would break into other people's places just to like explore, and so they heard about this place being haunted. I think the lot number was 15, And they're like, yeah, don't go into this one. It's haunted. Well, my brothers thought it would be fun that they went in to this broke down mobile home that is abandoned and flooded and iced up. So they went in at night with their friends, and they all shared the same story. They said in the bathroom they heard the water run, like the faucet turn on. Then they heard a little boy laughing. And they knew, because they were all guys, and they were a bit older, like 13, 14, 15-year-olds. And they were like, they knew there was none of them. And this kid was just laughing in the bathroom. And they all ran out at the same time. And they knew it had to be a spirit, because what kid would be in that bathroom in an abandoned mobile home by himself 8, 9 o'clock at night? And that was their story of an abandoned mobile home that was like a few mobile homes away from us.
When I first heard my friend Anonymous tell that story about the disembodied hand he saw in his childhood, I was intrigued. It was strange, vivid, and it stuck with me. In fact, it left such an impression that even after almost 15 years, I never forgot it. But at the time, it felt like a one-off, just one of those bizarre, unexplained events you file away in the back of your mind. That is, until I started hearing it again and again. Different people, different places, but the same disturbing detail. A hand, unattached, or protruding from some impossible place, always reaching and always terrifying. That's when it stopped being just a strange story and started looking like a reoccurring phenomena. So I started digging, and what I found was something far older and far more widespread than I ever expected. On this case file of Mysteria Arcana, we're going to explore the most chilling, confounding, and downright creepy tales of disembodied hands. Case 1. The Grey Hand of Manchester. The first case takes place in the quiet suburb of Chorlton, Manchester, England. The year was 1998, and a young man named Daniel thought he understood the world, but he was in for a strange awakening. A 24-year-old mechanic, Daniel was used to late nights at the pub, stumbling home through the damp, cobbled streets of his neighborhood. But on the night of October 17th, something happened that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Something that defied explanation. It was just past midnight, and Daniel had stopped at a small, dimly lit public restroom near Chorlton Park. The facility was old, its tiles cracked and stained, the air heavy with the smell of mildew and neglect. Daniel locked himself in the furthest stall, seeking a moment of solitude. The fluorescent lights buzzed above faintly, casting long shadows across the floor. He sat there, lost in thought. Then he heard it, a soft, scratching sound, like nails dragging across the tiles. At first, he dismissed it as a rat or the wind rattling the loose window panes. But the sound grew closer, more rhythmic, as if something was crawling toward his stall. His heart quickened. He glanced down at the gap between the stall door, where a silver light revealed the floor beyond. And then he saw it. A hand, its fingers unnaturally long and gnarled, crawling its way under the door. The skin was ashen, almost translucent, gray, with coarse black hairs sprouting in patches, and the nails were jagged, yellow, and impossibly sharp. Daniel froze, his breath catching in his throat. The hand didn't just rest there, it moved with a purpose, inching toward his ankle, which dangled above the floor. He could feel the air growing colder, as if the hand brought with it a chill from some otherworldly place. Then, with a sudden jerk, the fingers wrapped around his ankle, the grip icy and impossibly strong. Daniel screamed, yanking his leg back and scrambling onto the toilet seat. The hand lingered for a moment, its fingers twitching as if testing the air, before it retreated, sliding back under the door with a faint, guttural rasp like a low growl. Daniel didn't wait to see what came next. He flung open the stall door and ran. He knew that the restroom was empty when he went in there, and when he did gather the courage to look back, he saw that the restroom was empty, the lights still flickering, but the air felt heavy, oppressive, as if something unseen was watching him flee. He didn't stop running until he reached his flat, locked the door, and barricaded it with a chair. For weeks afterward, Daniel refused to use the public restrooms, and he swore he could still feel the cold grip of that hand in his nightmares, as if it had left a mark on his soul. What was the gray, hairy hand that grabbed Daniel that night? Was it a prank, a hallucination brought on by drunkenness or exhaustion, or something far darker? Locals in Charleston whisper of similar stories, an old legend about a vengeful spirit tied to the park, a groundskeeper who lost his hand in a grisly accident decades ago, his restless soul still reaching out for the living. Daniel, now in his late 40s, insists that this encounter was real. The building now still stands, but stands vacant, boarded up with its windows dark.
If you're still listening, friend, you've got a taste for the strange and paranormal. But don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share Mysteria Arcana with your fellow explorers of the unknown. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and Spotify. If you want to support Mysteria Arcana directly and help keep the lights on, please join my Patreon or buy me a cup of coffee. Links in the description below. It's generous viewers like you who will make this show a success, keep these case files open, and keep the coffee flowing. Thank you for listening and for your support. Now, let's get back on the case.
Case 2. The Bloody Hand of Ashford. In the small town of Ashford in the summer of 2005, two young siblings, Emma and Thomas, aged 6 and 8, shared a bedroom in their family's modest, terraced house on Hunter Avenue. Their bunk bed, a creaky wooden structure, was their sanctuary, a place of whispered secrets and late-night giggles. But on the night of July 23rd, at exactly 2:03 a.m., the sanctuary became a stage for something inexplicable and terrifying. Emma, on the top bunk, woke first, stirred by a strange sensation, like the air in the room had thickened and was pressing against her chest. She rubbed her eyes and sat up, her gaze drawn to the corner of the room where the moonlight filtered through a gap in the curtains. She decided to see if her brother was awake and took a peek at the bed below her. That's when she saw it, a disembodied hand hovering above the bottom bunk where Thomas slept. The hand was large, larger than any human hand should be, and it glistened with a dark red, wet sheen, as if coated in fresh blood. Its fingers curled and uncurled slowly, like a spider flexing its legs, and it emitted a faint, sickly sweet odor, like rotting meat. Emma's gasp woke Thomas, who sat up bolt upright on the bottom bunk. He froze, his eyes locked on the same horrific sight. The hand didn't move toward him. It simply floated, its outline sharp against the dim light, as if suspended by invisible threads. The siblings later described how the hand seemed to pulse, its veins throbbing beneath the slick, bloody surface. Emma swears she saw a faint glow in the palm, like a distant ember, and Thomas claims he heard a low, rhythmic, bumping sound like a heartbeat coming from nowhere. For what felt like an eternity, but was likely only a minute or less, the children sat paralyzed, clutching their blankets, unable to scream. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the hand dissolved into the air, leaving behind a faint reddish smear on the bunk bed's frame, like a fingerprint too large to be human. When the parents heard Emma's screaming, that's when they rushed in. They found the children trembling, their faces pale. The smear on the bunk bed was real, a sticky residue that smelled faintly metallic, but it faded within hours, leaving no trace. The family eventually moved out of that house a year later, unable to shake the feeling that something lingered in that bedroom. Neighbors in Ashford whispered of a tragedy tied to the house. A previous tenant, a man named Harold, who died in a violent accident in the 1980s, his hand crushed in a factory mishap. Could his restless spirit have left behind a fragment of itself, manifested as the bloody hand? The house on Hunter Avenue still stands, now occupied by new tenants, who report strange noises at night, thumps, scratches, and some say the faint drip of liquid in the dark. Have you experienced something strange? Something you can't explain? I want to hear from you. It is simple, fast, and easy to submit your stories. Go to vocaro.com. That's VOCARO.com.
MySteriaRcana.com. Link in the description. Then just click record, save, and share to Mysteria Arcana Podcast at gmail.com. It's that simple. And you could be on an upcoming case file of Mysteria Arcana. Or, if you prefer your story in writing, send your encounter via email directly to me, again, at MysteriaArcanaPodcast at gmail.com. That's Mysteria Arcana Podcast at gmail.com. Your true paranormal story could be featured in an upcoming case file. But for now, let's get back to the stories. Case File 3, The Poltergeist Hands of Reddit. In the digital age, stories of the supernatural find new life in the corners of the internet, where anonymous voices share their darkest encounters. On the subreddit r Paranormal, a community dedicated to the unexplained, a chilling pattern has emerged over the past decade. Reports of disembodied hands reaching out from the shadows to grip, pull, and terrify. These accounts span from 2015 to as recently as February 2025. They paint a picture of a phenomenon that refuses to be dismissed as mere imagination. One of the most vivid accounts comes from a user named Shadowed by Walls, posted in October 2017 from Leeds, England. The user, a 29-year-old nurse named Sarah, described what happened to her at her flat. Exhausted, she collapsed after a long night shift of work. She collapsed into her bed around 3 a.m., only to wake an hour later, unable to move, a classic sign of sleep paralysis. But this was no ordinary episode. As Sarah lay frozen, she felt a pressure on her legs, like someone was sitting on the bed. Then, from the corner of her eye, she saw them, 2 pale, bony hands emerging from the wall beside her bed. The hands were unnaturally thin, their fingers elongated and tipped with cracked, blackened nails. They crawled across the blanket, inching toward her face, leaving faint scratches in the fabric. Sarah described a suffocating sense of dread, as if the hands were pulling the air from the room. She couldn't scream, she couldn't move, but she felt the cold touch of those fingers brushing her cheek, leaving a tingling sensation that lingered for hours. When she finally broke free of the paralysis, the hands were gone, but the scratches on her blanket remained, jagged tears that matched no object in her room. Sarah moved out shortly after, convinced her flat was haunted by something tied to its previous occupant, a man who died alone in the building years earlier. Another account posted January 2022 by Night Warden 88 from Chicago, Illinois, tells of a similar encounter. The user, a 34-year-old IT worker named Marcus, was staying in a friend's guest room when he felt a sharp tug on his ankle in the middle of the night. Thinking it was a prank, he sat up only to see a single translucent hand retreating under the bed. The hand was small, almost childlike, but it had grasped with an iron grip, leaving red marks on his skin that faded by morning. Marcus searched under the bed, but found nothing. No trapdoors, no hidden compartments. His friend later admitted the house had a history of strange occurrences, including sightings of a young girl who died there
in the 1970s. A third account from Echoes in the Dark, Sydney, Australia, posted in November 2024, describes a hand gripping the bed frame during a bout of sleep paralysis. The hand was gray, with veins pulsing beneath the skin, and it seemed to hum with a low electric buzz. The poster, a 22-year-old student named Lily, woke to find faint burn marks on her bed frame, like fingerprints seared into the wood. She later learned her apartment was built on the site of an old hospital where unexplained deaths were rumored in the 1950s. There's something about childhood, the silence of your room at night, the way your imagination feeds on every creak and shadow. But what happens when it's not just your imagination? When something real brushes against your reality? This next story comes from Reddit user uDarkSkulls on September 19th, 2019. It didn't go viral. It didn't blow up with fanfare. But maybe that's what makes it feel more honest, more raw. The poster was around 11 years old at the time. A normal kid. No Ouija boards, no ghost hunting, no shadowy family secrets. Just an ordinary kid living an ordinary life. That night, like many before it, he climbed into bed, turned out the light, and tucked his hand under his pillow, as many people do. But as his fingers slid beneath the familiar silky smooth cloth of his pillow, they found something that shouldn't have been there. A hand. Cold. Still. He felt it. Just for a moment. Long enough to realize what it was. In that instant, he stopped, shot upright, and pulled the pillow from the bed. His room was just as it always had been, silent and empty. No one else was there. No sibling playing a prank. No loose toy or object tucked between the pillow and the sheet. Just the strange, unnerving absence of rational explanation. He never saw anything again, never heard a sound, or had an unexplained feeling of dread. Just the memory remained. One that will stay with him forever. One of cold flesh and bone that never should have been there. And maybe that's the most chilling part, isn't it? That at any time, a single brush with the unknown can haunt you for the rest of your days. The experience might be over, but it's the feeling of not knowing that lingers on. Case 4. The Hands of Dartmoor. Some people don't believe in the paranormal. Others don't believe that the paranormal is tangible enough to hurt us. But as we will soon see, that simply isn't true. There are things in this world that will take us if they can. Things we don't yet understand or comprehend. Dartmoor, 1921. A vast brooding wilderness in Devon, England. 368 square miles of granite tors, ancient bogs, and mist
that swallows you whole. The B3212 road, a narrow ribbon of asphalt, cuts through the moors between Post Bridge and Two Bridges, flanked by heather plants and the ghosts of medieval monks who once walked these paths. It's a place where the air smells of damp earth and secrets. This is where the hairy hands made their name, and they've been terrorizing travelers since the 1900s. Our first mark is Dr. Ernest Helby, a 38-year-old medical officer at the Dartmoor prison, a grim fortress housing some of England's worst. It's June 1921, dusk. The sky a bruised purple over the moors. Ernest, a steady man with a doctor's calm, is riding his Triumph motorcycle, a sturdy beast built for the rough roads. His two kids, Emily, 6, and Thomas, 8, are tucked into the sidecar, bundled in wool coats, laughing as the wind whips their faces. The family's heading home, maybe dreaming of a supper by the fire. Ernest keeps it at 35 miles per hour, cautious on the winding B3212. Then it happens. The bike lurches, like a horse spooked by a snake. Ernest grips the handlebars, muscles strained, but they twist left hard against his will. He looks down. 2 hairy hands, calloused and thick, like a miner's, but unattached to any body, are clamped over his own, wrenching the bike toward a ditch. His heart slams in his chest and he screams, "Jump," to his 2 small children, voice raw with panic. Emily and Thomas tumble into the grass, unharmed as the motorcycle flips, crushing Ernest on impact. The kids, sobbing, tell police they saw nothing, just their father fighting an invisible force. The Western Morning News runs a small piece calling it a tragic accident, but locals whisper of unseen hands. 3 years later, August 1924, Florence Carter, a 29-year-old typist, sets up camp near Post Bridge, not far from where Ernest met his end. She's a city girl, but she loves the moors, wild beauty, the way the stars burn bright over the tors. She's alone in her caravan, reading a dog-eared copy of Wuthering Heights by lantern light, the air thick with the scent of peat and pine. Around midnight, a scratching sound breaks the silence. Not the wind, not a branch, but deliberate, like nails on glass. Florence glances at the window and freezes. A hairy hand, gray and coarse, presses against the pane. Its fingers splayed, crawling upward with slow, predatory intent. The knuckles are marred with dark hair, the skin rough as stone. It's tapping once, twice, 3 times, each sound like a hammer on her nerves. Her book slips to the floor, pages fluttering. She makes the sign of the cross and whispers a prayer her mother taught her, and the hand slides out of sight, leaving only silence. The Western Morning News buries her story on page 7, but it spreads like wildfire among Dartmoor's locals,
who already avoid that stretch of road at night. Florence never went back there again. The sightings don't stop there. In 1938, a lorry driver named George Tuttle, 45, swears to the Exeter and Plymouth Gazette that hairy hands grabbed his wheel, nearly sending him into a ravine. In 1962, a cyclist, Mary Jenkins, 22, reports to police that the invisible hands yanked her handlebars, tossing her into a ditch with a sprained ankle. The BBC's Ghosts of Dartmoor 2008 documentary interviews a retired farmer, Tom Pierce, who claims that in 1975, at age 50, he felt a cold, rough grip on his car's steering wheel, forcing him to brake hard to avoid a crash. Even in recent years, posts on X, like @MoreMysteries in 2023, describe drivers feeling an evil presence on the B3212, with one anonymous user claiming that in 2024 that hairy hands appeared in their rearview mirror, vanishing when they screamed. The stories pile up, each one echoing the same dread. Something's out there, and it wants you off the road. The hairy hands of Dartmoor aren't some campfire story. They've been documented over decades. Accounts number in the dozens, all pointing to the same thing: rough, hairy hands appearing from nowhere to drag you away. The B3212 is still there, cutting through the Dartmoor's heart, and drivers still swear they feel something in the mist, a gripping of their soul, a presence that doesn't belong. Maybe the Moor's history, druid magic, ancient burials, or tragic deaths created this phenomena, or maybe it's all just a trick of the mind, born of fog and fear. Disembodied hands are nothing new. The phenomena will continue. It could happen to anyone. So, sleep well, my friends. If you hear a noise scratching in the night, or the smell of rotting flesh, don't open your eyes. Maybe it will go away. But just to be safe, be sure not to let your foot hang over the edge of your bed. I hope you enjoyed tonight's case files as we looked into the unknown. Please follow, like, and subscribe. If you could, share the show and leave us a review. It helps more than you know. And don't forget to send your true paranormal story to Mysteria Arcana Podcast at gmail.com and help the community and the case files to grow. Remember, friends, keep your eyes open, your flashlight loaded, and never stop asking what's really out there. Thank you, and until next time, I'm Alan Arcane, and this was Mysteria Arcana.
This podcast contains discussions of the paranormal, folklore, and allegedly true accounts of strange phenomena. Some stories are drawn from listener submissions, while others are based on historical events, legends, and public records. While every effort is made to present facts accurately, some details may be subject to speculation or interpretation. This program may include content created or enhanced with the assistance of artificial intelligence tools. All music and sound effects featured in this episode are courtesy of the YouTube audio library and Pixabay, and are free to use under their terms and conditions. Any similarities to real persons living or dead are purely coincidental. Mysteria Arcana is an independent production. For questions, submissions, or business inquiries, contact me at mysteriaarcanapodcast@gmail.com. Please remember to submit your stories to vocaro.com. That's VOCAROO.com. Just to click, record, save, and share. Thanks a lot for listening, and good night.
This concludes our broadcast day. Good night, and God bless America.